Well, I'm Kathleen O'Keefe with Cowsmopolitan and really have the pleasure of sitting down here this afternoon with David Dyment. Many of you in the business know David. He's been very, very well known and well photographed as the leadsman of many of our famous champion cows, supreme champions at Madison, champions around the world. In fact, David, you've made a career out of being one of our best cattle presenters in the Holstein business and also the Jersey breed, a few other breeds, but primarily in the Holstein business. You've also started in 2020, 2021, launched AG3, a sire marketing business in an industry where there's a lot of people marketing bulls and running AI studs and everything. And your business has now, just in the last year or two, really started to come to prominence. You've got some bulls that are very recognizable. We did our All-American nomination announcements yesterday here in Nashville. There were a number of daughters of your bulls that were announced yesterday, and I think people are really getting to know AG3 and curious about it. I think for a while people didn't know that you were the founder and president of AG3, and we've been wanting to sit down and do this conversation for quite a while to get some backstory about not just AG3, but about yourself. So I think people know the person, they know the face, they've seen the photographs, but let's dig into a little bit, not too deep, a little bit the backstory about David Dyment, Dyment Home Genetics, and that progress into starting AG3. So I think many people know that you are an Ontario native, Dundas, Ontario. So tell us a little bit about where you grew up, the farm you grew up on, your herd, your background, the herd at that time, and how that shaped your philosophy of loving Holstein cattle and moving forward.
Thank you. Getting involved in the sire procurement / development business has been a dream of mine for years. And when we discussed that on the way here in the car, I was thinking, when did that occur to me? And I'm 62 now, and I think it was somewhere when I was about 16 or 17, and I know exactly when it was. And we milk cows in a parlor, freestall barn, and my dad was a big advocate of getting out of the barn in good time in the day, have chores done. So we had to have the milkers on at 4 a.m. I remember it like yesterday. It was February, and I was having to leave the parlor to walk up and shovel the grain in. There were these pipes that went down into
Bin
the
and auger.
Yep. And it was blowing snow, and I got thinking, I think I want to do
This
something
is not the life for me.
I love the cows. I love the genetics, but I need to get into the.
I didn't know flogging and milking cows twice a day
Wasn't my interest
to make a living solely on the milk
living
check.
milking cows. It was a great place to start and a great place to understand, that dynamic and understand, how a dairyman needs to make money. We also lived in an area that we were very close to the city, and expansion, even at that time, was probably going to be out of the question. And so it was going to be about finding different uses for the farm. Plus, we were already involved in the genetic end of it, and had been for a while, but not really aggressively. And so we're going to have to start looking at different forms of income to subsidize.
Sure. Even today, diversification is the big
100%.
word in our business, and in
100%.
agriculture at large, but especially the dairy business. But let's dig into, so maybe for some people that are a little younger and don't know, tell us about the Dyment family and their farm in Dundas and the Glen Drummond herd. And I think a lot of us have heard of the Flower, Shower. The cow family has kept going generation after generation and kind of gets renamed over time. But I think your family really saw the tremendous advantage of finding that prolific cow family that can change your bottom line with genetics instead of just a milk check. So,
well, when my dad was away at university, he did the 2-year, I guess you call it the short course, and the farm burned down. And so my grandfather, who was progressive and a businessman, We had chickens. We had an orchard. So they had an egg route in Dundas, orchard as well, the dairy, like milked cows. And so because we milked great cows, and there were registered cows, I'm sure. But selling genetics wasn't a thing. Selling cattle wasn't a thing, other than, I suppose, if they went for beef and that kind of a
Sure.
thing. So they built a very progressive type of setup for those days. I think it was in 1956 or 1958.
Right.
They built a parlor.
Right. You had one of the first parlors
Exactly,
and
one of the
freestalls in
first parlors.
Canada, right?
Absolutely. No freestalls. It was loafing
Oh,
barn.
loafing bar.
Yes.
Mhm.
And then at some point they decided this is
Right.
crazy. So
Put
we had
some
to
freestalls.
they put the freestalls in. And my dad came home from school, got married, and my mom came from a horse background, but a real
Right.
livestock person. And my dad was getting really interested in pedigrees. One of his best friends was Doug Wingrove, Alan Grove,
Alan
which
Grove.
was, you go back into the Star Winnies and
Right.
all those that.
Right.
He sold to
Master
Oscar
breeder herd in its
Oh,
day.
100%, a great herd of cows. And Doug was getting, my dad interested in it, and Doug had bought a cow that my dad had bought, and then they loved this cow, and so they went back, and I guess Doug had picked up her sister, and I'm going to try to remember the names. No one else will remember unless Doug hears this. I think it came from a guy named John Pop, and it was Ferglin Farms, and so my dad went back and bought a cow by the name of Ferglin Ragapple Bertha. And she made, and I don't know if it's 1967, like 24,000, 1,400 of fat, a Canadian championship record.
Quite a record even today, but
Quite a
back in the late
record.
1960s, really a tremendous record.
Yeah, going
Right.
through the parlor,
Right.
living in a
Right.
freestall, getting
And she is the matriarch,
she is
founded that
of
family.
the whole flower, splendor, shower,
Whatever you
all
want to call it.
whatever.
Right. Yep.
They're morphing constantly. And I said to my dad a while ago, I said, I said, your breeding is still coursing through the veins of a large population in the dairy industry today, that all go back to that cow.
Right.
And my mom was really passionate about it. My dad was very passionate about it. My dad was more of the pedigree person. My mom was more of a livestock person.
Right.
And
It's the perfect match.
it was the perfect
Well, I
match.
think that's what's amazing about our business is the people can go, and
Yeah.
be gone, and yet the people in our industry for years to come will be seeing those names back in those pedigrees forever. It's same in the thoroughbred horse business or the dog business or whatever. In any pedigree livestock business, it's amazing. And yeah, the Splendor Flower Shower family, as you said, when your family sold out in 2000,
Well, we sold out a couple times,
okay,
and then they
early
kept some
2000s,
early
finally had your
2000s
final
Yeah,
dispersal.
yeah,
And
yeah.
animals from there went to Quebec, they went to the US,
Well,
they went all over
interestingly
the
enough,
place
Kathleen, they got another master breeder shield 3 years or 2 years
after the
after they sold.
dispersal,
I think it was
which
3
really
years.
says a lot.
Yeah,
So of cattle that
got the
went on
second
and
one.
flourished in other homes and other places,
Mhm.
while your family had the herd, certainly put bulls into stud, bulls
Yes.
into AI,
Mhm.
did all that. And then obviously the Jenna Beck group from Quebec,
We did a
tremendous job
tremendous job.
exploiting the family internet. Well, your
Yeah.
family did a great job. I think Canadian livestock on the whole did a great job
Yep.
exporting internationally. And then Jenna Beck, all the people that bought into your herd. But I'm going to back us up just a little bit. We're kind of racing ahead a little bit. But so
As
that
I
is
do.
your family background and that cow family. And I think certainly you must have learned valuable lessons from your mom and dad in the advantages of promotion and marketing, the right sires and the right cow at the right time, and knowing the value of those genetics at the right time, and not and determining that those genetics had value. Having said that, I think your family did a masterful job promoting, selling the right cows when they should have, holding on to the right cows for the herd, and to keep building on those genetics in your herd. But let's back up. Let's talk about you as a young man. Doing other things, stepping out away from the farm a little bit. I know you had a maybe short but prolific career as a fitter. traveled internationally doing that, and then moved into buying some cattle. You got into buying commercial cattle. You got into buying, like a lot of us do, some cattle to quote unquote flip, find a nice heifer, develop her a little bit, flip her on. You always had an eye for great show cattle, which you're well known for. So let's talk about that a little bit and move
Sure.
into um, maybe moving from a person who was on the road a lot, bought a lot of commercial cattle, bought a lot of show cattle, had a lot of success, but finding those couple of cows that you really saw their genetic worth, and talk about that.
Yes, I did have a brief stint as a fitter. Um, I was fortunate enough to, be kind of uh, growing in that part of the industry through the days of the David Browns, the Lowell Lindsays, Scott Mayland, who was a cousin, who were high end, Ken Empey, high end, what I would call cattleman fitters.
Right.
I was not. To be completely honest, oh, my brother was very good. Jamie worked for Eckstein's
Mm-hmm.
and that kind of a thing. I was good, but not great,
Mm-hmm.
and I kind of knew that. I'm a little. I don't have the patience that they all they
Well,
all
I
do.
do love the story you tell of, like, you work hard and sweaty for 2 or 3 days. A
Yeah,
guy shows up in his white
right.
clothes,
Yeah,
takes
no,
the
and I
cow
got
into
that
the
figured out.
ring
Yeah,
and brings her back. Everyone's clapping him on the back.
yeah,
What a great job. What a good
yeah.
job. And you recognize pretty quickly that that's my strength.
That's my strength, and
And
I
I think
thought,
we all know that path you took
yeah,
then to wearing
yeah.
your whites and presenting cattle in amazing condition. You do just one of our world's greatest leadsmen, and I'll say that. Um, but I think what people don't know is how many years you did travel the roads,
Oh, absolutely.
selecting commercial cattle. That you assessed hundreds of thousands of cows to go be production cows in the U.S.
Yeah, back in my fitting days, I got a job in Colombia in South
Hmm.
America, and it came through Holstein, Canada. And the people were very good to me. It was an excellent experience for me. I went on and off for two or 3 years, and what that did, they were one of Shore Holstein's clients,
Clients.
uh, and they were very good to me. And they told Shores that they would not buy any cattle unless I was there to approve them, that I had to ride
Mhm.
with them. And so that started my journey with Shores. I started working for them, and on a contract basis. And Hardy was their person, and so Hardy and I became great friends.
Mhm.
And I could never understand, because I was younger than Hardy was, and he was someone that I respected as a talented
Mhm.
auctioneer. But he and I shared the same passion for pedigrees and sire stacks and those kinds of things, and good cattle, and I spent a lot of time with Hardy. It was a great relationship, and I was on the road a lot for them. I would order by for them for loads of cattle that would ship wherever they were going to
Mhm.
go, fresh cows, that kind of a thing. And that was a wonderful experience for me. And w-
And
it,
why do you say that? Like, you learned the business on the road. You learned what to look for
well,
in
I
those
met a
kind of
lot of
cows. You
people.
networked. The
I
Shores,
w-
of course, had a
it
massive
it
network,
was the
right?
networking. It
Hmm.
was meeting a lot of people. And when I was on the farms, every time I went to those barns, I'd always be looking at what sire,
Hmm.
you know, and then that would help me.
Right.
I'll never forget when we made shower.
Hmm.
Um, I'd been on the road with Dan Donor up in that Port Perry area, and I came home and Dad said,
What do you see
what are
that
we
you
going to
like?
mate? What are we
Yeah.
going to mate? What are we going to mate this cow to? And I said to him, I remember the look on their face. I said, enhancer.
Mm.
And they said, what? And I said, well, he's red carrier. I said, he's going to
High
bring some
production.
belly back
Yeah.
into him. I
Big
said,
rib.
he's going to give him a shot of milk. I said, really good enhancers. And so we made it
Hmm.
or two enhancer.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, I enjoyed meeting with people. I liked discussing and debating uh, sires and talking cows on all those farms. Everyone's got their different slant, but when I had that 2 or 3 hour drive home at night, I'd be able to take all those things that
Process
all
that.
those people, and I'd be thinking, okay, this one was an outlier.
Right.
So, I'm maybe going to throw
Right.
that one out. But what was the general theme of the day? What
Mhm.
what what was it that where what did I see and what did I
Right.
hear?
What was gonna work on your
Yeah,
place, what was not gonna work.
exactly.
Yeah, I think in
Exactly.
those days when there were so many smaller herds around and you could
Yeah.
say, "They manage a certain way that works
Hmm.
for us, that they
Hmm.
have a different style
Yeah.
that's probably not. They like a different kind of cow
Hmm.
that we do or
Hmm.
don't like," right?
Hmm.
If that was probably your early 20s?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then when I was about 25, the farm next door came available,
Mhm.
and my brother came to me and said, "Look, we can't make this work here. One of us has to
Feed 'em.
go," and I couldn't wait to get going on my own. So I went over there and I rented it,
Mhm.
and so I just milked cows.
Yep.
We didn't breed them back. I
Mhm.
wasn't on test. I didn't classify.
Every cow had a price tag.
Every cow had a price tag,
She was moving in and moving out.
and she was
Yeah.
moving in and she was moving
Mhm.
out, and that was a great time in my life. I
Sure.
thought, boy, this
Right.
thing's.
So you were dealing cattle, but they were nicer
But the
pedigreed.
milk check was
Right.
awesome.
Right, and the
I'm
milk
telling you,
check
I had no expense.
floated. That's right.
I had no
Mhm.
expense, until, when my parents sold the first time. Of course, I had shower and
Mhm.
flour, and a few
They
of their
came
daughters
to
moved
reside.
next door,
Right.
and my easygoing life, came to an end in a hurry. All of a sudden, I had cows in box stalls.
Right.
I was on test. I was
You had to
classifying.
get stuff
I
bred, you had to
had
get
the
stuff
vet coming.
flushed.
Oh
And your
no, it
mom
was,
checking on you every day?
she was in the barn every day.
That's
Every
great.
day. Oh yeah.
That's great.
No, no, no. It was a big change for me, but I liked it.
Mhm.
I kind of It brought me back to the pedigree,
Mhm.
part of the business. And uh
The
it was
marketing part of
the
the
marketing
pedigreed
part, the
cattle.
the mating, and we were marketing over 500 embryos a year.
So all of that going on at home, you had the valuable cows over at your place now, you had your mom checking and everything, but if I have my timeline right, it's also a time where you were instrumental and maybe sitting on the board of directors at Wobe, Western Ontario Breeders at that time. And um, uh, tell us about how that shaped you. Like that really probably was your introduction or more um, put a foundation on your knowledge of the AI business, the sire business, obviously a very seminal time with Wobe and starting to move into those amalgamation years.
It was. I I was approached by a member of the board of directors who was retiring, and he said, "David, I need you to run and take my seat." Or I was approached by two different people, and I thought, I'm not prepared for this. But like I said earlier in this conversation, I wanted to get in and learn about the bull, the sire procurement end of it. And so I did run, and I did get elected. And of course, I went there with all my own preconceived ideas, and I knew best. But once I sat there and was able to spend time listening, and we had some excellent board members. Howard Cornwell, who milked a lot of cows, but wouldn't be a lot of cows today, but in a freestall barn, who thought very commercially. Jim Jenkins, whom was another one who was very progressively minded, and they challenged me to think differently. They challenged me to uh, have a more encompassing look at genetics and a more progressive um, ideal. And uh, it was a turning point for me, and uh, it was a time too the business was changing and we were downsizing, and Wobe ended up becoming Gencor. We amalgamated with United Breeders, of which I was sitting on the sire committee and chairing that one as well. And then, of course, we came to CMEX, and uh, I was chairman of CMEX USA. I got the great portfolio there, which was, again, instrumental for me to see this dynamic from I saw the U.S. business from a Canadian point of view. Now I was experiencing it from a U.S. point of
Mhm.
view. The dynamic here, and was able to get a keener understanding of how business is done in the U.S. and it was very different than Canada. Um, and uh, it it changed again the way that I thought about genetics and DNA. And at that point in my life, I was involved in the commercial cattle business and being highly influenced by American buyers that were up here buying cows, because they sure looked at them a lot different than I did. And I got thinking, these guys are buying cows to make milk. They're buying cows for a milk check. Maybe I'm the one that's not looking at this thing just 100%. So I was in this thing of this perfect storm
Mhm.
of being schooled by American buyers and being schooled by AI, but I was able to kind of hold on to that part of myself, you know, where my core beliefs were being shifted but not changed.
Right.
And I think that was the most seminal moment in my life, for cattle breeding and how I approach it.
Right. So you think that really established, and we'll move into your philosophy and how that affects your selection of bulls for
Right.
AG3. But I think you're also very well known for some prominent females that you purchased. So maybe let's talk about. I know you've told me in the past about back, and I think a lot of people know your involvement with Chastity and know your involvement with Apple and some other great cows. But even before that, um, back with the Ravens, with the Markwell Raven family, many years before, I think maybe let's just quickly chat about your first kind of quote unquote big elite female purchase.
Yeah, that was awesome. We were on a sire trip, and we went into Markwell Holsteins,
Hmm.
and I
Out in
saw
Washington.
and I saw Black Star Raven.
Hmm.
Loved her. And I saw her Mark mother, loved her. And then this big Thor bred heifer came walking out, and I went, "Oh my goodness, what are you?" And anyways, I turned to one of my best friends, this Ralph Furr, who was on the committee. I said, We're going to buy that cow, that heifer." And I said, "This family's just starting to take off." I said, "I love the sire stack with Black Star on Mark." And I said, Thor is a bull. He was a California bull.
Hmm.
I'm not,
Yep.
but a bull that did some things I liked. I thought he's different. We're going to bring this back to Canada. And he says, "We're on a sire trip. I'm not sure we can do this." I said, "I'm just going to ask Murray."
Hmm.
So I went to Murray and I said, "Murray, I want to buy that cow." And I said, "Are you going to make me come back next week and buy her?" And he said, "Nope, you go right ahead." So we, this is kind of funny. We were all at the convention, and that's why we were down there in Vancouver. We booted across the border to Washington, and I said to Mark Van Mersberg, I said, "We want a price on that cow," and I said, "I want you to give me the best price you can." I'm going to even say the numbers.
Hmm.
I said, "I want the best price you can," and I said, "I'm not going to make you an offer." I said, "It's either going to be yes or no." So we sat down at a table, and his dad was standing right there. Mark said, "I want 50,000 for her." I said, "I told you we weren't going to negotiate." I said, "We're going to negotiate." And Mark said, "No, we're not." And his dad, Marv, wasn't long pushing him out of the seat.
Hmm.
He sat down and he said to me, I was number 30. He said, I was a basketball player. And he said, I was number 33. He said, "I want 33,000 for that cow." And he said, "4 embryos back." And I turned to Ralph and Gary West,
Hmm.
another member of the sire committee. I said, "Are you guys good?" I said, "Yep." And I shook his hand. And the interesting thing about her was she was tested to go to the show, but they didn't bring her. So they whipped her across the border, and Bruno
Giacomazzi.
Giacomazzi took her to the airport for us. We flew her home. I'll never forget, I took my dad with me, the truck and trailer to the airport in Toronto, watching her and a Jersey cow that Roger Ray had bought coming across the tarmac off the plane, and there she was, and she calved a week later. I thought if
Mhm.
I put her on a truck,
You'll
she's
never get there.
she's not gonna make it.
Mhm.
We're gonna fly her home. And so, yeah, and then she was awesome for us. She
Mhm.
scored well. She was grand champion as a 2-year-old at Ralph First Show. And then we sold her to Japan for 100,000 back
Mhm.
when that
That
was a
was
lot of money, and we'd sold embryos out of her.
right.
And then we ended up buying a Luke sister to her that we did a fair bit of business. So
Right.
that was our first. The
So
Ravens
you're
were our first soiree, my first soiree at that kind of money. I was used to cows for, you know, once they got to 5,000,
Mhm.
I was shaking in my boots.
Mhm. So it was your first big roll of the dice, and it
Yeah,
turned up sevens.
yeah.
Right.
They all don't.
They all do not.
They
That
do
is
not.
the that is the
Yeah.
livestock business, that's for sure. So I love that story of like you saw this cow and this family that was just starting to explode. So we're gonna move forward ahead, I don't know, a decade or so to a cow named Chastity
Mm.
and Reagan Cress S. Chastity, a Shottle daughter. At the time, Shottle was really coming to prominence as a sire. And I love the story of how you went to see her and oh, this Barbie family. This I gotta learn a little bit more about this Barbie family and tell us about Chastity, how she was
Yeah,
a game changer for you.
yeah, that was crazy. Ernie called me. I was working with Ernie and Arthurs at the time,
Mhm.
and he said, "Ugh," he says, "Scott Courtney's got a shottle cow." He said, "Can you go look at her?" And I was at a Wisconsin spring show. I said, "Sure." And said they want a lot of money for her. He said, "I don't know." Got up in the morning and went in to see the cow, and I went, "Oh my gosh!" Now I want to preface my comments by saying I wanted a shottle.
Mhm.
I already had one.
Mhm.
And I thought she was a nomination cow,
Mhm.
but the full pedigree. She would go went back to the Splendors,
Right.
had a great
Shuttle
index. Her
Silk.
mother, oh yeah,
Mhm.
no. And I thought, wow, and Shotto will really. I loved the shot. I think he was a great bull, um, but he wasn't really one that made show cows.
Mhm.
Wasn't worried about winning the show, about having a cow there that could have some respect.
Right.
And so, anyways, I looked at this guy and went, you could, you could be the one. And, anyways, I just turned to Scott Courtney. I said, "Will you take any less?" And he said, "No." And I said, "I'll take her."
Mhm.
And, Jeff Stevens was with me, and he said, "I'm in." I said, "Jeff, I'm going on my gut on this one." I said, "I don't think this is
It's a big
at
risk.
this kind of money." Uh, it was 250,000.
Mhm.
So I went and I called Ernie. I
Mhm.
said, "Hey, Ernie." He says, "What'd you think of the cow?" I said, "I bought her." And there was silence on the phone. And, he said, "Well, what are you gonna do?" I said, "I'll take her on my own."
Mhm.
I said, "I like her that much. We can own her together, or you can own her on your own. You can you can do whatever you want." I said, "Well, let's own her together." So that didn't take much more than half an hour.
Mhm.
Jeff and I got in the car. We had to change our flight because I said, he said, "Where are we going?" I said, "We're going to Reagan Crest." He said, "Why's that?" And I said, "I got to figure out who these Barbies are." I had no idea.
Right.
I kind of knew, but I didn't.
Right.
And I said, "I got to find out who these Barbies are." And yeah, and we made Gold Chip.
Right. Well, and it was a cow family that was coming to prominence in the early genomic days, and it
Right.
was a family that did well, and obviously Shottle did very well. It was a number one bull for several years, several runs, and most of you watching know that David and Ernie eventually sold Chastity and the package of her progeny for $1 million, and in that progeny was Gold Chip, many great cows and other bulls involved in that, and so you're a co-breeder of a bull that's still influential. Goldwyn son in the show ring today is back in a lot of the pedigrees of our show winners here today. You were one of the groups that owned Apple in her day. Again, was able to work with partners. Think had a tremendous flush to talent, which resulted in Apple's Absolute. A couple excellent '94 daughters as well. One of which was the dam of Diamondback, and again sold that package for $1 million at the Global Glamour sale in 2008, I believe. So, is it some of it dumb luck? Is it some of it just knowing these cows at the right time? There seems to be a synergy of both promotion and timing and luck. Do you ever think lightning strikes again? Apparently it has for you.
No, absolutely. Apple was a bit of an anomaly. We saw her springing. I'll never forget Brian Benke leading her across Mike Deaver's front lawn.
Mhm.
And I was thinking, oh, that's a nice springing heifer. And I never thought about her. Mike was so high on her. And he was an early believer. Well, he owned her at that point with partners.
The
Uh,
longest term believer.
the longest term believer, yes. And well, I think we all were
Mhm.
believers. He had an affair with that cow
Yep.
that he was never going to end.
Yep.
That affair was never going to
Yep.
end. And I get it.
Mhm.
I totally get it. For me, when I had that epiphany, Ernie sent me to Mike Deaver's. Jeff Butler picked me up at the airport. Butler wanted to buy Hazel. And so Ernie wanted me to be there, because the two of them were going to buy the cow
Mhm.
together. So they got Hazel out and let her, and of course she looked wonderful. And next thing I know, I said, "Hey, can I see that red cow
Red
out
heifer.
here?" And they brought her out, and I turned to Jeff Butler and I said, "We're dealing on the wrong cow." I said, "This, this, this is the one."
Mhm.
And Jeff was in a place where he wanted he was more interested in having the intermediate champion,
Mhm.
and Hazel was going to be that.
Mhm.
That's the kind of cow she was. And so I let that pass, and you know, and I don't even, frankly, I was so obsessed with Apple at that point. So I said to Mike, I said, "Mike, this is not an offer, but would you take," and I don't even remember the number, but it
Right.
was a six-figure number. And he said, "No."
Mm.
It was a hard no.
Mhm.
And I thought there's no number.
Right.
And then of course she went on to be, maybe one of the first Reds to win.
Ever win in the black
Mm,
show, right? One of the few.
yes, yeah, but a handy winner, a
Mhm.
beautiful winner. And then of course, the opportunity, a couple of the partners wanted to get out. And so Ernie and I were driving to, I think, one of the Legends of the Fall sale, and I had Mike on speakerphone, and I was buying out one of the partners, and then he said, "I think you can buy out the second one." I said, "I'll take that one too." And Ernie said, "What are you doing?" And I told him. He said, "Oh, really?" I said, "Yep." And he said, "Can I have one of those shares?" And you talk about these cows. These cows are great, but you got to have great partners.
Mhm.
And Ernie was a great partner. Mike Deaver was a great partner. And I'm not saying things always go right, but if you've
Right.
got the right cow with the right partner, sometimes all you have to do is have the right cow, and she'll even make up for the wrong partner.
Right. She'll
You
take
know.
care of you.
So, Mike wanted to do the talent flush. Uh, that was his baby, and yeah, I think the rest is history
Mhm.
with her.
He
She's
was
been a game changer for the red breed.
right. Both breeds, but
Both.
particularly the red breed. Her family for sure has done that. Well, we'll move forward a little again. You've bought and sold and been involved with some other really high and well known cows. And I think what we're going to move forward into and getting to the advent of
Mm,
AG3 is both your purchase of Walnut Lawn, McCutcheon Summer, and then moving into the partnership and maybe where the AG3 name came from, the partnership that was established with Summer and a couple other cows, and that moved into you creating these bulls that needed a home.
mm. Yeah, Summer probably been one of my favorite uh, cows I've ever owned, and she never gets her due.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure why, but I saw her at Oxford County Show, and I thought this cow's gonna be grand. I went and grabbed Jeff Stevens because I trust him.
Mhm.
Uh, he tells you the truth when you want his opinion. And I said, I'm not asking you if you think this cow can win Madison. I already know she can't. But I said, do you think her legs and udder are good enough to get her into sixth, fifth?
Mhm.
He said, absolutely. Of course. So I priced her
Mhm.
that night. She was a six-figure cow.
Mhm.
And I told the guy, I said, I don't care how she places tonight. I want to bring Michael up. And I wanted to talk to Sebastian Dion. Sebastian and I were cashing some pretty big royalty checks from Cemex on a bull by the name of Simpatico. Anyways, uh, we had a big royalty check, and I called up Michael, who could write a big check,
Right.
and Michael came up and said, "Let's buy her."
Mm.
But our goal was show her, introduce her to the world, uh, and uh, you know, let's make some bulls from her.
Right.
Uh, we were entering into, she was a former number one type cow. She was by a new, uh, McCutcheon, who was kind of new at the time, and we just thought there was some great marketing stuff to be done with her. Unfortunately, um, you know, the AI studs were uh, starting their own programs. They'd already partnered with some herds, and so although we did do some business on some sons, we
Right.
saw the writing on the wall. And Sebastian and Michael and I decided that, we need to figure out some way to market our
Right.
semen and do some stuff on our own.
So it's really good to know that a partnership, obviously three people, you and Michael and Sebastian, saw it worthwhile, the genetics of McCutcheon Summer, to invest in that and a fair bit of money into that. And I know she made Summerfest and Select and Suban, and she made some bulls, and you marketed embryos. She's nominated, you did all the things right. But you could see there was a kind of a closing of an era, a limiting of an era as to what AI was going to be purchasing from you. And so as we bring this segment to a close, we'll thank you for sharing your background and the backstory. And we're looking forward to our next segment, in which we hear about maybe the next purchases you made and how that led into the formation of AG3 as your sire marketing, sire development company.